The ballroom falls silent. She grips her architecture award, staring at the man who threatened to destroy her career. 5 years ago, I was told to choose. His face drains of color. He doesn't know the twins are here. Before we dive in, comment where in the world you're watching from and don't forget to click subscribe. The pregnancy test sat on the bathroom counter like a live grenade. 2 pink lines. Naomi Sterling stared at those lines until they blurred, her hands trembling so badly she had to grip the marble sink to stay upright. She was 26 years old, a junior architect at Morrison & Hayes, finally making a name for herself in a field dominated by men who looked nothing like her. She had plans, dreams, a portfolio that was starting to turn heads. And now this. She pressed her palm against her still flat stomach and felt her world tilt sideways. Through the bedroom door, she could hear Ethan Morrison on a business call, his voice sharp and commanding in that way that used to make her pulse race. Now it just made her nauseous. Or maybe that was the baby. Their baby. The thought sent ice through her veins because she already knew how this conversation would go. She'd seen how Ethan reacted when his younger sister got pregnant at 23. The cold fury in his eyes. The way he'd called her irresponsible and stupid. How he'd said some people shouldn't be allowed to reproduce. Naomi had defended his sister that night, told him he was being cruel. He'd kissed her and said that's what he loved about her, her compassion, but that someone had to be realistic in this world. She picked up the test again, studying it like it might suddenly show different results. 6 weeks. That's what the doctor had confirmed yesterday. 6 weeks since that weekend in Paris when they'd gotten careless, drunk on expensive wine and the intoxication of being young and beautiful and in love in the most romantic city in the world. Except Naomi was starting to realize she might be the only one who'd been in love. Ethan had never said the words, not in the 18 months they'd been together. He'd said she was brilliant, stunning, the most interesting woman he'd ever met. He'd introduced her to his mother, taken her to charity galas, flown her to Milan for a long weekend. But love, that word had never crossed his lips. The bathroom door opened and Ethan walked in, already dressed in one of his perfectly tailored Tom Ford suits, hair still damp from his shower. He was objectively beautiful, the kind of white man who looked like he'd been carved from marble by some Renaissance master, all sharp jawline and piercing blue eyes. Naomi used to think he looked like a young Paul Newman. Now he just looked dangerous. "Morning," he said, kissing her forehead absently while checking his watch. "I have that meeting with the Tokyo investors at 9. Should be done by noon if you want to grab lunch at that place you like." Naomi opened her mouth and nothing came out. "Just tell him," she commanded herself. "Rip off the Band-Aid." But her throat had closed up tight, and all she could do was nod numbly while Ethan adjusted his tie in the mirror, completely oblivious to the fact that her entire world was crumbling. "Are you okay?" he asked, finally noticing her reflection. "You look pale." "I'm fine," she managed. "Just tired." He frowned, studying her with that analytical gaze he usually reserved for architectural plans and quarterly reports. "You've been tired a lot lately. Maybe you should see a doctor. Get some vitamins or something." The irony almost made her laugh. "I will," she said. Ethan kissed her again, this time on the lips, quick and perfunctory. "Gotta run. Love you." He'd said it so casually, so automatically, like signing off an email. The door clicked shut behind him, and Naomi stood there holding a positive pregnancy test, replaying those 2 words in her mind. Love you. Not I love you. Just love you. Like a reflex, not a feeling. She looked at herself in the mirror. Really looked. Her dark skin was ashy, drained of its usual warm glow. Her natural hair, usually carefully styled, was pulled back in a messy bun. Her eyes, deep brown and usually full of fire, looked haunted. This was not how this was supposed to happen. If she'd ever imagined having a baby, it was years in the future, after she'd made partner at the firm, after she'd designed something that mattered, after she'd proven to everyone, including herself, that a black girl from the South Side who'd clawed her way through architecture school on scholarships and spite could make it in this world. Not now. Not like this. Not with a man who couldn't even tell her he loved her properly. But even as those thoughts raced through her mind, Her hand drifted back to her stomach, protective and possessive. A baby. Her baby. Growing inside her right now. Tiny and vulnerable, and depending on her to make the right choice. She spent the morning in a fog, sitting at her drafting table at the firm but seeing nothing. Her best friend and fellow architect Simone Rodriguez noticed immediately. "Girl," Simone said, rolling her chair over. "What's wrong? You look like somebody died." Naomi glanced around the open office layout, making sure no one else was listening. "I need to tell you something, but not here." Simone's eyes widened. "Lunch. Thai place around the corner. 12:30. I'll make up some excuse about a client meeting." The Thai restaurant was nearly empty between the lunch and dinner rush. They sat in a corner booth and Naomi pulled the pregnancy test from her purse, still wrapped in tissue paper like contraband. Simone looked at it for a long moment, then back at Naomi's face, then back at the test. "Oh, honey," she breathed. "Does he know?" Naomi shook her head, fighting tears. "I don't know how to tell him." Simone reached across the table and gripped her hands. "How do you feel about it? Forget Ethan for a second. How do you feel?" That was the question, wasn't it? Naomi took a shaky breath. Terrified. Excited. Overwhelmed. Confused. "I wasn't planning this. I'm not ready. But Simone, I keep thinking about this little person growing inside me and I can't just..." She couldn't even finish the sentence. Simone squeezed her hands tighter. "You don't have to explain yourself to me or anyone. This is your choice. Your body. Your life. What do you want?" "I want to keep it," Naomi whispered, and saying it out loud made it real in a way that terrified and exhilarated her simultaneously. "I know it's crazy and bad timing, and probably the worst career move I could make, but I want this baby." "Then that's what matters," Simone said fiercely. "And if Ethan Morrison has a problem with it, that's his problem, not yours." But Naomi knew it wasn't that simple. Ethan wasn't just her boyfriend. He was her boss's son, heir to Morrison and Hayes Architecture, one of the most prestigious firms on the East Coast. His family had money that went back generations, the kind of wealth that came with power and influence, and the ability to make people's lives very difficult. She'd seen it firsthand, the way Ethan could make a single phone call and doors opened, the way his name carried weight in rooms she couldn't even get into. "What if he doesn't want it?" Naomi asked quietly. "What if he asks me to, you know?" Simone's jaw set in that stubborn way Naomi knew well. "Then you tell him to go to hell and you have this baby anyway. You don't need his permission. You don't need his money. You don't need anything from him except basic human decency. And if he can't give you that, then he was never worth your time anyway." Naomi wanted to believe it was that easy, but she'd grown up with a single mother who'd worked 3 jobs to keep them fed and housed. She knew exactly how hard it was to raise a child alone, especially as a black woman in America, especially in a career field that was already hostile to her existence. The odds were stacked against her in ways Simone, with her upper-middle-class background and light-skin privilege, couldn't fully understand. That evening, Naomi cooked dinner, Ethan's favorite, braised short ribs with roasted vegetables and garlic mashed potatoes. She set the table with their good dishes, lit candles, poured him a glass of the expensive Bordeaux he loved. She'd rehearsed what she would say 100 times in her head. "Ethan, I have something important to tell you. Ethan, I'm pregnant. Ethan, we need to talk about our future." Every version sounded wrong, too clinical or too emotional or too demanding. But she had to do this. Tonight. Before she lost her nerve completely, Ethan arrived home at 7:30, loosening his tie as he walked through the door. "Something smells incredible," he said, kissing her cheek. "What's the occasion?" "No occasion," Naomi lied, her heart hammering so hard she was sure he could hear it. "Just wanted to do something nice." He looked pleased, that boyish smile she'd fallen for transforming his usually serious face. "You're too good to me. You know that?" He poured himself more wine, topped off her glass even though she hadn't touched it. "So how was your day? Did you finish the Henderson project renderings?" They made small talk through dinner, Naomi barely tasting the food she'd spent hours preparing. She watched Ethan eat, watched him talk about the Tokyo deal, the new office expansion, his father's latest demands. He was animated, excited, completely unaware that she was about to drop a bomb that would change everything. When he finally pushed his plate back with a satisfied sigh, Naomi knew it was now or never. "Ethan," she began, her voice steadier than she felt. "There's something I need to tell you." He looked at her, really looked at her for the first time that evening, and something in her expression made him go still. "What is it? Are you breaking up with me? Is that what this dinner was about?" "No," Naomi said quickly. "No, it's not that. It's just, The word stuck in her throat like broken glass. "Come on, spit it out," Ethan said, and there was an edge to his voice now, impatience creeping in. "I've had a long day and I'm not in the mood for guessing games." "I'm pregnant," Naomi said, and the words hung in the air between them like accusation. The silence that followed was so complete she could hear the clock ticking in the hallway, the distant sound of sirens on the street below. Ethan's face had gone completely blank, that careful, neutral expression he wore in high-stakes business meetings. "You're what?" he said finally, very quietly. "Pregnant," Naomi repeated, her hands clenched in her lap. 6 weeks. We're having a baby." "No," Ethan said, standing up so abruptly his chair scraped harshly against the floor. "No, we're not having anything. You're pregnant. That's very different." The coldness in his voice shocked her. "I don't understand," she said. "This is our baby. Our responsibility." "Is it?" Ethan asked, and there was something cruel in his eyes now, something she'd never seen directed at her before. "How do I know it's even mine?" The question hit her like a slap. Naomi stood too, fury replacing her fear. "How dare you? You know damn well I haven't been with anyone else. We've been together for 18 months. "Do I?" Ethan asked, pouring himself another glass of wine with hands that weren't quite steady. "Do I really know that, Naomi? Because the timing here is awfully convenient. My father just announced he's retiring next year. I'm set to take over the firm. And suddenly, you're pregnant?" Naomi felt sick. "You think I got pregnant on purpose? To trap you?" Ethan shrugged, taking a long drink. "I think it's a hell of a coincidence. And I think we need to deal with this situation quickly and quietly before it becomes a problem." "Deal with it," Naomi repeated slowly. "You mean get rid of it? Get rid of our baby?" "It's not a baby," Ethan snapped. "It's a cluster of cells. And yes, I mean terminate the pregnancy. I'll pay for the procedure, the best doctor, recovery time, whatever you need. But this," he gestured vaguely at her stomach, "this doesn't work for me right now. I'm 29 years old. I'm not ready to be a father, but I'm keeping it," Naomi heard herself say, and even though she'd known that was her decision, saying it to his face felt like jumping off a cliff. "I'm keeping our baby whether you want to be involved or not." Ethan set his wine glass down very carefully. "No," he said. "You're not." The certainty in his voice chilled her. "Excuse me? This is my body, Ethan, my choice. You don't get to tell me what to do. Don't I?" he asked, and there was something dangerous in his expression now. "Let me explain something to you, Naomi. If you go through with this, if you have this baby, I will destroy your life. I'm not joking. I'm not exaggerating. I will systematically dismantle everything you've worked for." "You can't do that," Naomi said, but her voice was shaking. "Can't I?" Ethan laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. "My family owns this city. We have lawyers, connections, influence you can't even imagine. You think you'll just have a baby and continue working at Morrison and Hayes? Think again. One word from me and you'll never work in architecture again. Not here. Not anywhere that matters. I'll make sure of it." "You're threatening me," Naomi whispered, unable to believe this was happening, that the man she'd loved had transformed into this monster in the span of minutes. "I'm being realistic," Ethan corrected. "You're a junior architect at my family's firm. You have student loans, I checked. Nearly $200,000. You're living in an apartment you can barely afford. How exactly do you plan to raise a child on your salary, especially once you're blacklisted from every decent firm on the East Coast?" He stepped closer, his voice dropping to something almost gentle, which somehow made it worse. "I'm trying to help you, Naomi. I'm trying to save you from making a mistake that will ruin both our lives. This doesn't have to be complicated. One simple procedure and we go back to normal. We can even start talking about the future, about getting engaged maybe. But if you insist on having this baby, you do it alone. And you do it unemployed, broke, and completely on your own." "Get out," Naomi said, surprised by how calm her voice sounded when everything inside her was screaming. "What? Get out of my apartment. Now." "This is my apartment," Ethan reminded her coldly. "I pay the rent, remember? Your name isn't even on the lease. So actually, if anyone's leaving, it's you." Naomi felt the floor drop out from under her. She'd been so stupid, letting him pay for everything, telling herself it wasn't a big deal, that he made so much more than her anyway. She hadn't realized he was building a cage. "Fine," she said, walking toward the bedroom. "I'll pack my things and be gone by morning." "You have 1 week," Ethan called after her. 1 week to make the right decision. After that, my offer is off the table and you're on your own in every possible way. You'll regret this, Naomi. You'll regret choosing a cluster of cells over a real future with me. Over everything I could have given you. She stopped in the doorway, turned back to look at him one last time. The man she'd thought she loved was gone, if he'd ever existed at all. All she saw now was a spoiled rich boy who'd never been told no in his life, who thought he could buy and threaten his way out of any inconvenience. "The only thing I regret," she said quietly, "is ever believing you were a good man." And she walked into the bedroom and closed the door on Ethan Morrison and the future she'd imagined for the last 18 months. She pulled her suitcase from the closet and started packing with hands that barely trembled because shock was setting in. That strange, numb clarity that comes with traumatic moments. She packed methodically, separating her things from his, realizing with sick certainty how much of her life she'd let him infiltrate. This apartment, the furniture, the art on the walls, even half the clothes in her closet. All his choices, his money, his control. Her phone buzzed. Simone. "Girl, how'd it go?" "Did you tell him?" Naomi typed back with shaking fingers. "Told him. It went badly. Really badly. Can I stay with you for a while?" The response came within seconds, already making up the guest room. "Come now. Bring wine. Wait, you can't drink. Bring ice cream." Naomi almost smiled. She grabbed her laptop, her portfolio, the few things that were actually hers. She heard Ethan open another bottle of wine in the living room, heard him on the phone with someone, laughing like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't just threatened to destroy her entire life. Like their baby wasn't growing inside her while he planned its elimination. She walked past him carrying her suitcase and a garbage bag full of clothes. He didn't look up from his phone call, didn't acknowledge her leaving beyond a dismissive wave of his hand. The elevator ride down felt like descending into hell, each floor marker another layer deeper. By the time she reached the lobby, tears were streaming down her face, hot and furious. The doorman, Marcus, a kind older black man who'd always been nice to her, took one look at her face and called a cab without being asked. "You take care of yourself, Miss Sterling," he said quietly as he loaded her bags into the trunk. "Whatever's happening, it ain't worth your tears. That man up there," he gestured toward the building, "he don't deserve you." Never did. Naomi managed to nod, to tip him even though she couldn't really afford it, to hold herself together until the cab pulled away from the curb. Then she broke completely, sobbing so hard the driver asked 3 times if she needed to go to a hospital. Simone was waiting outside her brownstone when the cab pulled up, and Naomi stumbled into her arms like a child. "He threatened me," she gasped between sobs. "He said he'd destroy my career if I kept the baby. He said I'd never work again. He said, oh God, Simone, what am I going to do? What am I?" "You're going to survive," Simone said fiercely, helping her inside. "You're going to have this baby, and you're going to build an amazing life, and Ethan Morrison is going to regret the day he underestimated you. I promise you that." But that night, lying in Simone's guest room with her hand pressed against her stomach, Naomi didn't feel strong or capable of anything. She felt broken, betrayed, and more alone than she'd ever been in her life. The man she'd loved had looked her in the eye and threatened to destroy her for the crime of wanting to keep their baby. "How did you come back from something like that?" Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "I hope you're thinking clearly now that you've had time to cool down. The clinic I mentioned has an opening Thursday morning. I've already made the appointment under a fake name. 9 a.m. I'll send a car. This is the right choice for both of us. Don't let pride ruin your future." Naomi stared at the message for a long time. Then she blocked the number, turned off her phone, and pulled the covers over her head. Thursday came and went. Naomi didn't go to the clinic. Instead, she went to work, walking into Morrison and Hayes with her head high, even though she felt like she might throw up from nerves and morning sickness. She'd thought about quitting, walking away before Ethan could make good on his threats, but she needed this job. More importantly, she refused to let him chase her away from work she'd earned through talent and effort, not connections or family money. Ethan was in a meeting with clients when she arrived. She could see him through the glass walls of the conference room, animated and charming, probably closing another multi-million-dollar deal. He glanced up once, their eyes met, and something cold passed over his face before he looked away dismissively. Her supervisor, Tom Chen, called her into his office before lunch. "Naomi, sit down," he said, and his tone was gentle, which scared her more than anger would have. "I've been asked to reassign your projects." "What? Why?" Naomi's heart was pounding. "I'm meeting all my deadlines. My work is good, you said so yourself just last week." "Your work is excellent," Tom agreed, looking uncomfortable. "This isn't about performance. It's about—" He hesitated, searching for words. "There have been concerns about your commitment level, about potential conflicts of interest." "Conflicts of interest," Naomi repeated flatly. "You mean Ethan?" Tom wouldn't meet her eyes. "I've been instructed to limit your client interaction and move you to research and documentation roles for the foreseeable future." Research and documentation meant grunt work, the kind of tedious behind-the-scenes tasks that kept you away from actual design, away from building your portfolio, away from advancement. It was career death disguised as reassignment. Naomi stood, her hands clenched into fists. "This is illegal. You can't punish me because—" She stopped herself just in time from saying, "Because I'm pregnant. Because of your personal relationship with Ethan Morrison." Tom finished for her. "Actually, we can. It's a family business. Nepotism works both ways." "I'm sorry, Naomi. I really am. But this is coming from the top and I don't have the authority to override it." She walked out of his office in a daze. Her desk had already been moved, she realized. Relocated from the open floor plan where junior partners worked to a windowless corner near the copy room. Her nameplate was gone. Her files were stacked in boxes. It had taken Ethan less than a week to start systematically erasing her. Simone found her sitting at the new desk, staring at nothing. "Oh, honey," she breathed. "He's really doing it. He's really trying to destroy you." Naomi looked up at her best friend and felt something shift inside her, something that had been soft and hurt hardening into something else entirely. "He can try," she said quietly. "But I'm not going down without a fight." The next 3 months were the hardest of Naomi's life. She showed up to work every day even though her assignments were mind-numbing, even though Ethan made sure she was excluded from every important meeting, every client dinner, every opportunity for advancement. She documented everything, every reassignment, every slight, every time she was passed over for projects that should have been hers. She was building a case, though she wasn't sure yet what she planned to do with it. She lived with Simone and saved every penny she could, knowing she'd need it when the baby came. She threw up most mornings, exhausted most afternoons, but she kept going because what choice did she have? Ethan pretended she didn't exist. They passed each other in hallways and he looked through her like she was a ghost. He started dating someone new, a blonde associate from the marketing department who looked like she'd stepped out of a Ralph Lauren catalog. She was everything Naomi wasn't. White, wealthy, connected, the kind of woman his family would approve of. He made sure Naomi saw them together, his hand on her back at company events, laughing at something she said in the elevator. It was calculated cruelty and they both knew it. At 12 weeks, Naomi had her first ultrasound. Simone drove her to the clinic and held her hand while the technician spread cold gel on her stomach. There was a long silence while the technician moved the wand around, frowning at the screen. "Is something wrong?" Naomi asked, fear spiking through her. The technician smiled. "No, everything's perfect. I'm just trying to get a good look at both of them." "Both," Naomi repeated faintly. "Both what?" The technician turned the screen toward her. "Congratulations. You're having twins." Naomi stared at the screen, at the two tiny blobs with their rapid heartbeats, and started laughing. "Of course," she said through tears. "Of course it's twins. Why would anything about this be simple?" Simone was crying too, squeezing her hand tight. "Oh my God, Naomi. Twins. You're having twins." The technician printed out photos, those grainy black and white images that all looked the same but meant everything. 2 babies. Naomi held the pictures in the car, studying them like they held the secrets of the universe. She'd been preparing herself for 1 baby, 1 mouth to feed, 1 future to plan for. 2 changed everything, made everything harder and somehow more precious at the same time. She made a decision that day. She couldn't keep working at Morrison and Hayes, couldn't keep letting Ethan slowly strangle her career. She needed to leave, to start over somewhere he couldn't touch her. That weekend, she sent out resumes to firms in other cities: Chicago, Seattle, Portland, anywhere far enough from New York that his influence wouldn't follow her. She got 3 interviews within a week. One of them, a medium-sized firm in Portland called Cascade Design Group, was interested enough to fly her out for an in-person meeting. The interview went better than she dared hope. The founding partners, Margaret Liu and David Foster, were impressed with her portfolio and seemed unfazed when she told them she was pregnant. "We're a family-friendly firm," Margaret said warmly. "Paid parental leave, flexible schedules, on-site childcare. We believe good design comes from people who have balanced lives. When can you start?" Naomi wanted to cry with relief. "I need to give 2 weeks' notice at my current position." She hesitated. "There might be complications. My previous employer is... Let's say they're not happy about me leaving." David exchanged a glance with Margaret. "Let me guess. Morrison and Hayes." Naomi's eyes widened. "How did you know?" "We've heard stories," Margaret said diplomatically, "about how they treat employees who don't fit their preferred demographic. If there are any issues with your departure, we have an excellent legal team. You're not alone in this, Naomi." That simple statement, "You're not alone," broke something open in Naomi's chest. She'd been alone for months, fighting and failing and losing ground every day. The thought that someone was actually on her side was almost too much to bear. She gave her notice the following Monday, a simple letter of resignation placed on Tom Chen's desk. Within an hour, Ethan stormed into her corner workspace. "You think you can just leave?" he hissed, keeping his voice low enough that nearby employees couldn't hear. "You signed a non-compete agreement. You can't work in architecture for 2 years after leaving this firm." "I reviewed the contract with a lawyer," Naomi said calmly, even though her heart was racing. "The non-compete only applies to New York and New Jersey. I'm moving to Portland. That's allowed." Ethan's jaw clenched. "You're making a mistake. No firm will hire you after I..." "You mean after you tell lies about my work and my character?" Naomi interrupted. "After you blacklist me for getting pregnant?" "Because I've documented everything, Ethan. Every reassignment, every slight, every threat you've made. I have emails, text messages, witness statements. If you try to interfere with my new position, I'll sue you and this firm for pregnancy discrimination and sexual harassment." The blood drained from Ethan's face. "You wouldn't dare. Watch me," Naomi said quietly. "You threatened to destroy my life. Well, I'm not going to let you. I'm not going to disappear just because it's convenient for you. I'm having these babies, and I'm going to be successful and happy. And you're going to have to live with the fact that you threw away something real because you're too much of a coward to be a father. Get out of my workspace. I have real work to do." She turned back to her computer, dismissing him. It was petty and satisfying, and for the first time in months, she felt like herself again. Her last day at Morrison and Hayes, there was no goodbye party, no farewell lunch. She packed up her personal items in a single box and walked out at exactly 5 p.m. Simone met her in the lobby with champagne, the non-alcoholic kind. "To new beginnings," Simone said, popping the bottle. And to Ethan Morrison, realizing someday what an idiot he was. They drank sparkling grape juice out of plastic cups on the steps of the building where Naomi had spent 3 years building a career that had been ripped away in weeks. But she was free. She was leaving. She was starting over. That had to count for something. Portland in December was cold and wet, but Naomi loved it immediately. The firm welcomed her like she'd always belonged there. She found a small apartment she could afford. Nothing fancy, but it was hers. Her name on the lease, her furniture, her choices. She set up a nursery in the second bedroom with Simone's help, who'd flown out for a long weekend. They painted the walls a soft gray and assembled cribs and argued about whether woodland creatures or space themes were better for neutral gender decor. Naomi was 4 months pregnant and starting to show, her body changing in ways that thrilled and terrified her. She didn't hear from Ethan. No calls, no texts, no child support offers. It was like she'd ceased to exist the moment she walked out of his building. "Good riddance," Simone said when Naomi mentioned it. "You don't need his money or his drama. You're better off." Naomi knew that was true intellectually, but emotionally, it hurt. She'd loved him, or thought she had. She'd imagined a future with him, marriage and children and growing old together. The betrayal still stung, sharp and fresh whenever she let herself think about it. Christmas came and went. Naomi spent it alone in her apartment, too pregnant and tired to fly home to Chicago to see her mother. She video called her family instead, watching her younger siblings open presents through a screen, feeling homesick and isolated. Her mother, a no-nonsense woman who'd raised 4 kids in the projects on a nurse's salary, was worried about her. "Baby, you sure you okay out there by yourself? Maybe you should come home. Have these babies where family can help you." "I'm fine, Mama," Naomi lied. "The job is great. I'm doing really well." "You ain't doing nothing well if you're alone and pregnant with twins," her mother said sharply. "That man, the father, he's still refusing to step up?" "He's not in the picture," Naomi said, keeping her voice neutral. "And that's okay. I can handle this. You shouldn't have to handle it alone." "That's what I'm saying. Don't be so proud you can't ask for help." Naomi promised she'd think about it, but she had no intention of going home. Going home felt like admitting defeat, like confirming every doubt anyone had ever had about whether she could make it. She was going to do this, going to prove she could build a life on her own terms. At 6 months pregnant, her boss Margaret called her into the office. Naomi's hands shook as she sat down, terrified this was going to be another Tom Chen situation. Another quiet removal disguised as concern. Instead, Margaret slid a portfolio across the desk. "We've been selected to bid on the new Performing Arts Center downtown," she said. "It's a major project, probably the biggest our firm has ever attempted. I want you to lead the design team." Naomi stared at her. "Me? I've only been here 4 months. I'm about to go on maternity leave." "Which is exactly why I'm giving it to you now," Margaret said. "You'll have time to develop initial concepts before the babies come. Then we'll assign a project manager to handle implementation while you're out. But this is your design, your vision. You earned this, Naomi." It was everything she'd wanted at Morrison and Hayes, and had been denied. She threw herself into the project with the energy of someone trying to prove her existence mattered. The Performing Arts Center became her obsession, her redemption, her middle finger to everyone who'd ever doubted her. She designed something bold and innovative, a building that honored Portland's artistic community while pushing the boundaries of sustainable architecture. The designs were brilliant, and she knew it. Could see it in the way Margaret's eyes lit up when she presented the first renderings. She was 7 months pregnant, huge and uncomfortable, but happier than she'd been in years, when her water broke at her desk on a random Tuesday afternoon. "This isn't supposed to happen yet," she gasped as Simone, who was visiting from New York again, grabbed her bag and helped her to the car. "You're only 32 weeks. Tell that to the babies," Naomi managed through contractions that were coming way too fast. "I think they're ready to meet the world whether I am or not." The delivery was traumatic and terrifying. The babies were premature, needed help breathing, were whisked away to the NICU before Naomi even got to hold them. She lay in the hospital bed, empty and aching. While doctors assured her the twins would be fine, they just needed time to grow stronger. 2 girls, she kept repeating to Simone. I have 2 daughters. Amara and Zuri, Simone said, reading from the birth certificates Naomi had filled out in the brief moment between delivery and the babies being taken away. Beautiful names for beautiful girls. After 5 days in the hospital, Naomi was finally allowed to see her daughters properly in the NICU. They were so tiny, covered in wires and tubes, but they were perfect, with their dark skin and shock of black hair and little faces that somehow already looked like Naomi. She held them both, one in each arm, and sobbed with relief and terror and overwhelming love. You're going to have the best life, she whispered to them. I promise. Your mother is going to make sure of it. The twins stayed in the NICU for 3 weeks before they were strong enough to go home. 3 weeks of Naomi living at the hospital, pumping breast milk every 3 hours, learning how to change diapers on babies smaller than footballs. The firm was understanding. Margaret stopped by with food and moral support. The team sent flowers and offered to help however they could. Naomi had found a community in Portland she'd never had in New York. People who supported her because they wanted to, not because they had to. When she finally brought Amara and Zuri home, Naomi stood in the middle of her small living room and looked around. 2 cribs, double everything, a life that looked nothing like what she'd imagined a year ago. No father, no partner, no happy family photos. Just her and 2 tiny humans depending on her for everything. She should have been terrified. Instead, she felt powerful. She'd done this. She'd survived Ethan's threats, built a new career, and delivered 2 healthy babies against all odds. She was stronger than she'd ever known. The first year was a beautiful nightmare, constant feedings and diaper changes. No sleep, no time for anything but survival. Simone flew out when she could, helped for a week at a time. Naomi's mother came for a month, clucking her tongue at the small apartment but softening when she met her granddaughters. Naomi worked from home as much as the firm allowed, bringing the twins into the office when she had to, grateful for a boss who didn't see children as unprofessional distractions. Her performing arts center design won the bid. It was going to be built, her first major building, the thing that would put her on the map professionally. The irony wasn't lost on her. Ethan had threatened to destroy her career. Instead, being forced to leave New York had been the best thing that could have happened. She was thriving in ways she never would have under his family's shadow. The twins were 11 months old when Naomi got the call that would change everything. Margaret found her in the conference room, reviewing construction documents. Naomi, you need to see this. She pulled up an architecture website on the large monitor. There, featured in a glowing profile, was Morrison and Hayes Architecture, celebrating their selection for a prestigious award. And there in the photo, shaking hands with the mayor of New York, was Ethan Morrison. He looked the same, maybe a little older, still devastatingly handsome in his perfectly cut suit. Still smiling that smile that used to make her melt. The article mentioned he'd recently become engaged to Victoria Ashworth, of the Connecticut Ashworths, a union the writer called a perfect match of old money and new vision. Naomi stared at the photo for a long moment, waiting to feel something. Pain, anger, regret. Instead, she felt nothing, or maybe relief. That could have been her life, trapped in a golden cage with a man who'd threatened to destroy her. Thank God she'd escaped. You okay? Margaret asked gently. Yeah, Naomi said, surprised to realize it was true. I really am. That part of my life is over. I've got everything I need right here. But life, Naomi was about to learn, had other plans. Because the same award program that honored Morrison and Hayes had also selected Cascade Design Group, which meant in 3 months, Naomi Sterling would be walking into an award ceremony in New York, where she would come face to face with Ethan Morrison for the first time since she'd walked out of his apartment 5 years ago. And this time, she wouldn't be alone. She'd have her daughters with her, living proof that his threats hadn't broken her, that she'd built an extraordinary life from the ashes of everything he'd tried to burn down. The night before the award ceremony, Naomi couldn't sleep. She lay in her hotel room staring at the ceiling, while Amara and Zuri slept peacefully in their portable cribs, their tiny chests rising and falling in perfect synchronization. They were 5 years old now, brilliant and beautiful with their mother's eyes and quick wit. They asked constant questions about everything. Why is the sky blue? Where do stars go during the day? Why don't we have a daddy like Emma at preschool? That last question always gutted Naomi, made her search for age-appropriate ways to explain that sometimes families look different and that's okay, that they had so many people who loved them even if their father wasn't in the picture. Tomorrow she would see him again. Tomorrow Ethan Morrison would walk into that ballroom and she would have to smile and be professional and pretend her heart wasn't hammering against her ribs. Simone, who'd flown in from her new position in Boston to provide moral support, was staying in the adjoining room. She'd wanted to come with Naomi to the ceremony, but Naomi had insisted she could handle it alone. Now, in the dark silence of 3 a.m, she wasn't so sure. She thought about texting Simone, asking her to come after all, but pride stopped her. She'd survived 5 years without Ethan. She could survive one night in the same room with him. Her phone buzzed with a message from Margaret. "Remember, you earned this. Your performing arts center is extraordinary and everyone knows it. Don't let anyone make you feel small. You're a star." Naomi smiled despite her nerves. Margaret had become more than a boss over the years. She'd become a mentor and friend, someone who believed in Naomi's talent without reservation. The Performing Arts Center had been completed 6 months ago to rave reviews. Architecture magazines had featured it, design blogs had written glowing articles, and Cascade Design Group had seen a massive influx of new clients. Naomi had been promoted to senior partner, was earning more than she'd ever dreamed possible, had bought a house with a yard where the twins could play. By every measurable standard, her life was better than it had been in New York. So why did the thought of seeing Ethan make her feel like that scared 26-year-old again, holding a positive pregnancy test and wondering how to survive? She must have dozed off eventually because she woke to Zuri's little hand patting her face. "Mama, wake up. It's morning time and we're hungry." Naomi checked her phone and groaned. 6:15. The ceremony wasn't until 7 that evening, but they had a full day planned. The twins wanted to see Central Park and the American Museum of Natural History. Normal tourist things that would hopefully keep Naomi's mind off the inevitable confrontation. They spent the day being thoroughly touristy. The girls ran through Central Park shrieking with delight, fed ducks at the pond, begged for hot dogs from a street vendor. At the museum, they pressed their faces against the glass displays, awed by dinosaur bones and giant whale models. For a few hours, Naomi forgot to be nervous. She was just a mother watching her daughters experience wonder, and it filled her with a fierce protective love that made her chest ache. By 4 o'clock, they were back at the hotel. Naomi had hired a babysitter through the concierge, a sweet college student named Jessica, who arrived with a bag full of activities. The twins took to her immediately, already showing her their favorite cartoons before Naomi had even finished giving instructions. "You look beautiful," Jessica said when Naomi emerged from the bedroom in her dress. Naomi had chosen carefully a deep emerald silk gown that complemented her dark skin and showed off the body she'd worked hard to reclaim after the twin pregnancy. Her natural hair was styled in an elegant updo, her makeup flawless. She looked successful, confident, like someone who'd made it. She hoped the external appearance would trick her internal terror into calming down. The ceremony was being held at the Plaza Hotel, because of course it was. Ethan Morrison wouldn't settle for anything less ostentatious. Naomi arrived fashionably late, walking into the already crowded ballroom with her head high and her heart in her throat. She spotted familiar faces immediately, architects she'd gone to school with, professors who'd taught her, colleagues from her Morrison and Hayes days who looked surprised and pleased to see her. Several people approached to congratulate her on the Performing Arts Center, to tell her they'd followed her career, that they were impressed by her Portland work. It felt good, being recognized for her talent, being seen as more than just someone's secretary or girlfriend or problem to eliminate. She was accepting a glass of champagne from a waiter when she felt it, that prickle on the back of her neck, that meant someone was watching her. She turned slowly, and there he was. Ethan Morrison stood across the ballroom in a tuxedo that probably cost more than her monthly mortgage, his arm around a tall blonde woman who must be Victoria Ashworth, his fiancée. He was staring at Naomi with an expression she couldn't quite read, Shock, maybe. Or recognition. Or something darker. Their eyes met across the crowded room, and for a moment the 5 years between them collapsed into nothing. She was 26 again, and pregnant, and terrified. And he was the man who'd threatened to destroy her. Then Naomi smiled, raised her champagne glass in a mocking toast, and deliberately turned her back on him. She heard Margaret's delighted laugh beside her. "Did you just toast and dismiss Ethan Morrison? In front of his fiancée?" Margaret asked quietly. "I did," Naomi confirmed, surprised by how steady her voice was. "Is that petty?" "That's perfect," Margaret said. "Come on, I want to introduce you to some people." Dinner was a blur of conversations and networking. Naomi was seated at the Cascade Design Group table, far enough from the Morrison and Hayes contingent that she didn't have to make small talk, but close enough that she could feel Ethan's gaze on her throughout the meal. He kept looking over, kept trying to catch her eye, but she refused to acknowledge him. She laughed at jokes, chatted with colleagues, acted like she didn't have a care in the world. When the awards portion of the evening began, Naomi's stomach clenched with nerves. There were several categories being honored tonight. Morrison and Hayes was receiving recognition for commercial design excellence. Cascade Design Group was being awarded the Innovative Public Spaces Prize for Naomi's Performing Arts Center, which meant she and Ethan would both be on stage at different points, would both give speeches, would be forced to exist in the same space. Morrison and Hayes was called first. Naomi watched Ethan walk to the stage with his father, the legendary Robert Morrison, and accept the award. His speech was polished and professional, thanking the right people, making the appropriate humble jokes. He'd always been good at public speaking, at charm and charisma when he wanted to deploy it. But there was something hollow about it now. Or maybe Naomi just knew better than to be fooled by his performance. Then it was her turn. Margaret rose with her, and they walked to the stage together, Margaret accepting the physical award while Naomi stepped to the microphone. She'd prepared a speech, had practiced it a dozen times, but standing there looking out at the ballroom full of people who doubted her, she decided to go off script. 5 years ago, Naomi began, her voice clear and strong. I was a junior architect at a prestigious firm in this city. I had dreams of designing buildings that mattered, of making my mark on the world. Then I got pregnant, and I was told by someone I trusted that I had to choose between my career and my child, that I couldn't have both, that motherhood would destroy everything I'd worked for. The room had gone completely silent. Out of the corner of her eye, she could see Ethan's face going pale. I'm here tonight to tell you that was a lie. She held up the award, the crystal catching the light. This building, the Portland Performing Arts Center, was designed while I was pregnant with twins. It was developed while I was learning to be a mother to 2 premature babies. It was completed while I was navigating single parenthood and sleepless nights, and all the chaos that comes with raising children alone. And you know what I learned? Being a mother made me a better architect, not worse. It taught me about designing for community, about creating spaces that serve everyone, not just the wealthy elite. It taught me resilience and creativity and how to do more with less. She paused, letting her words sink in. To the young women in this room, especially the young black women who are told they have to be twice as good for half the recognition, don't let anyone convince you that you have to choose. You can be brilliant at your work and devoted to your family. You can build extraordinary things while building extraordinary lives. And to anyone who tries to threaten you, who tries to limit you, who tries to convince you that your worth depends on making yourself smaller, prove them wrong. That's the best revenge there is. The applause was thunderous. People were on their feet. Several young women were crying, and Margaret was squeezing her hand so hard it hurt. As they walked off stage, Naomi allowed herself one glance toward the Morrison and Hayes table. Ethan was standing, clapping mechanically, his face a mask of barely controlled fury. Victoria looked confused, like she sensed something was happening but couldn't quite figure out what. And Robert Morrison was watching Naomi with an expression of grudging respect. The rest of the ceremony passed in a blur. Naomi was congratulated by dozens of people, handed business cards, invited to speak at conferences and universities. She felt dizzy with success and vindication, and the intoxicating rush of having publicly called out Ethan without saying his name. Everyone in that room knew who she'd been talking about. Everyone knew she'd just burned him in front of his peers, his father, his fiancé. She was accepting another glass of champagne when a hand touched her elbow. Naomi. The voice was familiar, painfully so. She turned to find Ethan standing there, having somehow crossed the ballroom without her noticing. Up close, he looked older. There were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there 5 years ago, gray threading through his dark hair. But he was still Ethan, still had those piercing blue eyes that had once made her stupid. "Mr. Morrison," she said coolly, deliberately formal. "Congratulations on your award." "We need to talk," he said quietly. "No, we don't. There's nothing to discuss. Naomi, please." He glanced around at the people watching them with barely concealed curiosity. "Not here. Can we go somewhere private? Why? So you can threaten me again? Tell me I'm ruining your life by existing? I think we're past that, don't you?" She started to walk away, but he caught her wrist, not hard, but firm enough to stop her. "I was wrong," he said, and the words seemed to cost him something. "About everything. I was cruel and wrong, and I've regretted it every day for 5 years." Naomi pulled her wrist free. "Good. You should regret it. Now excuse me. I have people to meet." She walked away on shaking legs, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it. She made it to the bathroom before the adrenaline crash hit her. She locked herself in a stall and let herself shake. Let herself remember. Let herself feel everything she'd been suppressing all night. The anger, the hurt, the betrayal, the memory of him looking at her with contempt while she held their future in her womb. She stayed there until she heard the bathroom door open and Margaret's voice. "Naomi? Honey, are you okay? I saw Morrison corner you." "I'm fine," Naomi managed, coming out of the stall. "I just needed a minute." Margaret studied her face. "You were incredible up there. That speech, God, I wanted to stand up and cheer. Every woman in that room was thinking about someone who'd tried to limit them, and you gave them permission to be angry about it." "Did I go too far?" Naomi asked. "Was it unprofessional?" Margaret laughed. "Honey, you went exactly far enough. And judging by the business cards I've collected for you in the last 20 minutes, your honesty just made you the most sought-after architect on the East Coast. People respect courage. You just showed everyone that Ethan Morrison doesn't scare you anymore. Except he did scare her, or at least the memory of him did. The memory of how much power he'd had over her life. How easily he'd been able to hurt her." She splashed cold water on her face, fixed her lipstick, and prepared to go back out there. The rest of the evening was easier. Ethan kept his distance, though she could feel him watching her from across the room. She networked and laughed and collected business opportunities that would keep Cascade Design Group busy for years. When the ceremony finally ended around 11, she was exhausted, but triumphant. She said goodbye to Margaret and colleagues, declined several invitations to after-parties, and caught a cab back to her hotel. All she wanted was to see her daughters, to hold them and remember what she was fighting for. Jessica was on the couch watching TV when Naomi let herself into the suite. Both girls were asleep. "They were perfect," Jessica reported. "We did crafts and watched movies, and they told me about 100 times how their mama is the best architect in the whole world." Naomi felt tears prick her eyes. "They really said that?" Direct quote. Jessica gathered her things. "They also wanted to know if you met a prince at the ball tonight. I told them probably not, but you never know." Naomi laughed. "Definitely no princes. Just a lot of boring grown-up stuff." After Jessica left, Naomi checked on the twins. They were tangled together in one crib, even though they had separate ones, the way they always ended up, like they couldn't stand to be apart even in sleep. Their faces were peaceful, innocent, completely unaware of the complicated history that had brought them into existence. Naomi touched each of their heads gently, her heart swelling with love so fierce it was almost painful. This was what mattered. Not Ethan, not revenge, not even professional success. These two little girls who needed her to be strong and present and whole. She was getting ready for bed when her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "It's Ethan. Please don't block me. I just want to talk. Just 5 minutes." You owe me nothing, but I'm asking anyway. Naomi stared at the message for a long time. She should delete it, block him, go to sleep and forget he existed. But curiosity was a terrible thing. She typed back. How did you get my number? From Tom Chen. He still has your old employee file. That's probably illegal, Naomi replied. Probably, Ethan agreed. I'm sorry. For tonight, for 5 years ago, for everything. Can we please talk? Tomorrow. 10 a.m., coffee shop next to my hotel. You have 15 minutes, not 5. Don't be late. She regretted it the moment she hit send. What was she thinking? Agreeing to meet him. What could he possibly say that would matter now? But it was too late. The message was sent. The meeting arranged. She would hear whatever pathetic apology he'd prepared, and then she would move on with her life. This time forever. She barely slept, again. When morning came, she dressed carefully in jeans and a sweater, casual armor, left the twins with Jessica, who was happy to earn extra money, and walked to the coffee shop with dread pooling in her stomach. Ethan was already there, sitting at a corner table, still in his tuxedo shirt and pants, though he'd lost the jacket and bow tie. He looked like he hadn't slept either, his hair mussed, exhaustion written in every line of his face. He stood when he saw her. Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would. 15 minutes, Naomi reminded him, sitting down across from him. Starting now. Ethan ran his hands through his hair, a nervous gesture she remembered. I don't know where to start. How about with why I'm here, Naomi suggested. What could you possibly need to say to me after 5 years of silence? I need to tell you I'm sorry. I need you to know that I've thought about you every day since you left. That I've regretted everything I said and did. That if I could go back and change it, I would. You can't, Naomi said flatly. So what's the point of this? The point is that you deserved better. You deserved love and support and partnership, and I gave you threats and cruelty because I was terrified. Terrified of what? Of everything. Of being a father. Of disappointing my family. Of losing control of my life. My father has always been so demanding, so critical. I felt like I was suffocating under the weight of expectations, and when you told me you were pregnant, all I could think was that it would trap me forever in a life I wasn't sure I wanted. Naomi laughed bitterly. So you tried to trap me instead, by taking away my career, my housing, everything. That seems fair. I know, Ethan said miserably. I know it was unforgivable. I was a coward and I hurt you in ways I can never take back. But I need you to know it was never about you not being good enough. You were always too good for me. That's why I was so threatened. Your talent, your strength, your integrity. They highlighted everything I lacked. And instead of rising to meet you, I tried to tear you down. That's not an excuse. There is no excuse. But it's the truth. Naomi studied him, trying to reconcile this defeated man with the arrogant CEO who'd looked at her with contempt 5 years ago. What do you want from me, Ethan? Forgiveness? Because I'm not sure I have that to give. I want, he hesitated. I want to know about them. The babies. In your speech you said twins. Daughters, Naomi said, something fierce and protective flaring in her chest. Amara and Zuri. They're 5 years old and brilliant and everything you'll never know. Ethan flinched like she'd slapped him. Do they know about me? They know they have a father who isn't in their lives. They don't know why or who you are. I've tried to be age-appropriately honest without making them feel abandoned. It's a delicate balance. I bet you're good at it, Ethan said quietly. You were always good at seeing all sides of things, at finding compassionate ways through difficult situations. That's one of the things I loved about you. Don't, Naomi warned. Don't you dare say you love me. You don't threaten to destroy people you love. You don't abandon them when they need you most. You're right, Ethan agreed. What I felt for you wasn't love. Or at least not the kind of love that matters. It was possession and attraction and convenience. I didn't love you the way you deserved. The way I should have. Naomi checked her phone. Your 15 minutes are almost up. What else? I want... Ethan took a deep breath. I want to know if there's any chance you'd let me meet them. Meet my daughters." Naomi's first instinct was to say absolutely not, to protect her girls from this man who'd tried to eliminate their existence before they even took their first breath. But then she thought about all the times Amara and Zuri had asked about their father, the longing in their voices, the confusion about why they were different from other families. "Why now?" she asked. "Why after 5 years do you suddenly care?" "Because I saw you last night and I realized what I'd lost. Not just you, but the family we could have been. The life I threw away because I was too much of a coward to step up. Because I'm getting married in 3 months, and I keep thinking about standing at that altar and knowing I have children in the world I've never met, that I created life and abandoned it. That's not the kind of man I want to be anymore." "Then maybe you shouldn't marry someone you don't love," Naomi said bluntly. "Because let's be honest, Victoria Ashworth is exactly who your family wants you to marry, and has nothing to do with who you actually want to be with." "How do you know I don't love her?" Ethan asked, but there was no conviction in his voice. "Because you're here," Naomi said. "Because you looked at me across that ballroom like the last 5 years never happened. Because I know you, Ethan Morrison, better than you think I do. And I know when you're living a lie to please your father." Ethan was quiet for a long time. "You're right," he finally admitted. "About all of it. Victoria's perfect on paper, but we barely know each other. It's a merger more than a marriage. My father arranged it, her father agreed to it, and I went along because that's what I always do. Follow the path of least resistance. Make everyone happy except myself." "That's your problem to solve," Naomi said, standing. "Not mine. I'm not here to save you from your own choices. But yes, you can meet the girls. Not today, not this trip. But I'll send you some pictures, and we can arrange something supervised later. If they want to meet you, if they're curious, then we'll set something up. But Ethan, if you do this, if you step into their lives, you don't get to leave again. You don't get to decide fatherhood is too hard and disappear. These are children, not a business decision you can pivot away from. Are we clear?" "Crystal clear," Ethan said, standing too. "Thank you, Naomi, for giving me a chance I don't deserve." "You're right," she agreed. "You don't deserve it. But they do. They deserve the chance to know their father if he's genuinely willing to show up for them. Don't make me regret this." She left the coffee shop feeling shakier than she'd expected. She'd just agreed to let Ethan Morrison, the man who'd threatened to destroy her, meet the daughters he'd wanted her to terminate. Was she insane? Was this a terrible mistake? She called Simone from the street corner, needing to hear her best friend's voice. "Girl, you did what?" Simone shrieked. "Are you out of your mind?" "Maybe," Naomi admitted. "Probably. But Simone, you should have seen his face. He looked broken. And the girls ask about him constantly. What if this is their chance to have a relationship with their father? What if I'm denying them that because I'm still angry?" "You have every right to be angry," Simone said fiercely. "He tried to destroy you. He threatened your career, your housing, everything. He told you to eliminate your babies." "I know," Naomi said. "Believe me, I know. But holding on to that anger isn't hurting him, it's hurting me. And maybe people can change. Maybe he's genuinely sorry. Am I being naive?" "You're being generous," Simone replied. "Which is very you and also terrifying. Just promise me you'll be careful. Don't let him charm his way back into your life. Don't forget what he's capable of." "I won't," Naomi promised. "This is about the girls, not about me and him. There is no me and him anymore. That ship sailed 5 years ago." She flew back to Portland that afternoon, the twins chattering excitedly about all the things they'd seen in New York. "Mama, can we live there someday?" Zuri asked. "It's so big and exciting." "Maybe someday," Naomi said, though the thought made her stomach clench. She'd built a good life in Portland, far from Ethan's influence. Moving back to New York felt like walking back into a trap. Over the next 2 weeks, Ethan texted occasionally, always careful and respectful. He asked about the twins, what they liked, what they were interested in. Naomi sent photos, short videos of them playing in the backyard, drawing pictures, dancing to music. Each time, Ethan's response was immediate and full of wonder. "They're beautiful. They look like you. I can't believe I missed so much." Naomi felt a complicated mix of satisfaction and guilt. Part of her was glad he knew what he'd lost, that he had to live with the consequences of his choices. But another part, the part that saw how her daughters' faces lit up when she told them their daddy wanted to meet them someday, felt like maybe forgiveness wasn't weakness. Maybe it was just making space for something new to grow. A month after the award ceremony, Ethan called instead of texting. His voice was strained when she answered. "Naomi, I need to tell you something. What's wrong?" "I broke off my engagement. Victoria and we're done. I told my father I couldn't go through with marrying someone I didn't love just to make him happy." Naomi didn't know what to say. That must have been difficult. "It was," Ethan admitted. "He threatened to remove me from the company, to disinherit me. Said I was throwing away everything he'd built for me. And what did you say?" "I told him I'd already thrown away the things that mattered, that I'd been living his life instead of mine and I was done. I don't know what happens next. I might not have a job in a week, but at least I'll have my integrity." Naomi felt something shift in her chest. "I'm proud of you," she found herself saying. "I know how hard it is to stand up to him." There was a long pause. "Would you?" Ethan said hesitantly. "Would you consider letting me visit Portland? To meet the girls? Just for a day, supervised like you said. I've cleared my calendar and I really want to meet them, Naomi. Please." She should have said no, should have made him wait longer, made him prove himself. But she thought about Amara and Zuri asking about their daddy, and she heard herself say, "Okay, this weekend, Saturday afternoon, 2 hours. If they're uncomfortable at any point, you leave. No arguments, no drama." "Agreed," Ethan said, relief evident in his voice. "Thank you. I won't let you down." "We'll see," Naomi replied. Saturday came too quickly. Naomi spent the morning coaching the twins, explaining that their daddy was coming to visit, that he was sorry for not being there before, that he wanted to get to know them. "Are you still mad at him, Mama?" Amara asked with her typical perception. "A little bit," Naomi admitted. "But I'm trying not to be. He made some mistakes, but he wants to do better now." "Is he nice?" Zuri wanted to know. "I hope so, baby. We'll find out together." When the doorbell rang at 2 p.m., both girls ran to hide behind Naomi's legs. She opened the door to find Ethan standing there in jeans and a sweater, looking younger and more nervous than she'd ever seen him. He was holding a bag full of wrapped presents and his hands were shaking. "Hi," he said. "Hi," Naomi replied. "Come in." He walked into her living room and stopped, staring at the two little girls peeking out from behind their mother. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Ethan knelt down, bringing himself to their eye level. "Hi," he said softly. "I'm Ethan. I'm your daddy." Amara looked at Zuri. Zuri looked at Amara. Then they both looked up at Naomi for confirmation. "It's okay," she said gently. "You can say hi if you want to, or you can just wait and see how you feel." After a moment, Amara, always the braver one, stepped forward. "Why weren't you here before?" she asked bluntly. "Because I made a mistake," Ethan said, and Naomi was impressed that he didn't try to sugarcoat it. "A really big mistake. I was scared and I wasn't ready and I ran away when I should have stayed. That wasn't fair to you or your sister or your mama." "Did you stop being scared?" Zuri asked, still half hidden behind Naomi. "Yes," Ethan said. "I stopped being scared and I realized I'd missed out on knowing two very special girls. So I'm here now if you want to get to know me. I brought some presents if that helps." It was shameless bribery, but it worked. Both girls perked up at the mention of presents. "What kind of presents?" Amara asked suspiciously. "Why don't you open them and see?" Ethan suggested, smiling. The next 2 hours were awkward and sweet, and surprisingly okay. The girls opened their gifts, art supplies and books and puzzles, perfect choices that showed Ethan had actually listened to what Naomi had told him about their interests. They showed him their room, their toys, their latest drawings. They asked him 1,000 questions. "Where do you live? Do you have a dog? What's your favorite color? Why is your hair different from ours? Can you do a cartwheel? Ethan answered everything patiently, asked his own questions, seemed genuinely interested in getting to know them. Naomi watched from the sidelines, her heart in her throat, ready to intervene if anything went wrong. But it didn't. The girls warmed to him gradually, especially when he got down on the floor to build with their blocks and didn't seem to care about getting his expensive clothes dirty. By the end of the 2 hours, Zuri was sitting on his lap showing him a book about space, and Amara was explaining in great detail her plan to become either a veterinarian or a superhero. She hadn't decided yet. Both were good options, Ethan said seriously. Very practical. When it was time for him to leave, both girls hugged him goodbye without prompting. Will you come back? Zuri asked. If your mama says it's okay and if you want me to, yes, Ethan replied. We want you to, Amara declared. Right, Zuri? Right, Zuri agreed. Ethan looked at Naomi with hope and fear and something that might have been love in his eyes. Naomi felt her carefully constructed walls crack just a little. We'll see, she said, which wasn't a no. Can I walk you out? They stepped onto the porch while the girls ran back inside to play with their new toys. That went better than I expected, Naomi admitted. Thank you for being gentle with them. They're incredible, Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion. Smart and funny and kind. You've done an amazing job raising them, Naomi. I mean that. I did what I had to do, she replied. Being a parent isn't about grand gestures. It's about showing up every single day even when you're exhausted and broke and scared. It's about putting their needs before your own. Can you do that, Ethan? Can you actually be a father, or was today just you easing your guilt? I want to be their father, he said intensely. I want to be in their lives, to know them, to support them. I know I don't deserve that chance, but I'm asking for it anyway. I'm asking you to let me try to be the man I should have been 5 years ago. He studied his face, looking for lies or manipulation. All she saw was sincerity and regret. Okay, she said finally. You can visit again. We'll set up a regular schedule, maybe every other weekend to start. But Ethan, the moment you flake, the moment you let them down, that's it. No more chances. I understand, he said. I won't let them down. I won't let you down. We'll see, Naomi repeated. Actions matter more than words. Show me you mean this. I will, Ethan promised, starting now. Over the next 6 months, Ethan kept his promise. He visited every other weekend, called the girls every Wednesday to check in, sent them cards and little gifts, showed up to their preschool graduation even though Naomi hadn't invited him. He was patient and consistent, and genuinely seemed to be trying. The girls adored him, talked about Daddy constantly, drew him pictures and made him crafts. Naomi watched it all with complicated feelings. She was glad her daughters had their father in their lives, glad they were building a relationship. But it also hurt in ways she hadn't expected. She watched Ethan be gentle and present with the twins, and wondered why he couldn't have been that man 5 years ago. Why it had taken losing everything to make him grow up. She was folding laundry one evening when her phone rang. Ethan, which wasn't unusual anymore. Hey, what's up? Did you forget something? Actually, I wanted to ask you something, he said, sounding nervous. The firm is doing a major project in Seattle, a sustainable housing development. We're partnering with local architects, and I immediately thought of you in Cascade Design. Would you be interested in submitting a proposal? Naomi sat down slowly. You want to work with me? Professionally? I want to work with the best, Ethan said. And that's you. Your Portland Performing Arts Center inspired this whole project. We're trying to create affordable housing that's also architecturally significant and environmentally responsible. That's exactly your specialty. This isn't about us, Naomi. It's about creating something that matters. She wanted to say no on principle. Working with Ethan, with Morrison and Hayes, felt like tempting fate. But the project sounded incredible. Exactly the kind of work she wanted to be doing. I'll think about it, she said. Send me the details and I'll discuss it with Margaret. Thank you, Naomi, for considering it. For everything. For giving me a second chance at being a father. For not hating me even though you have every right to. I don't hate you, Naomi said. surprised to realize it was true. I did for a long time, but I don't anymore. You're trying to be better. That counts for something. A week later, Cascade Design Group submitted a proposal for the Seattle project. 2 weeks after that, they won the bid, which meant Naomi would be working closely with Morrison and Hayes, with Ethan, for the next 18 months. Margaret was thrilled. "This is huge for us," she said. "A project this size with a firm like Morrison and Hayes. It puts us on the map nationally. Are you okay with it? The Ethan situation?" Naomi considered. "Yeah, I think I am. We're different people now. We can be professional." The first joint meeting was scheduled for Portland. Ethan flew in with 3 members of his team, including his father. Naomi hadn't seen Robert Morrison since the awards ceremony and braced herself for hostility or dismissal. Instead, the older man shook her hand and said, "Miss Sterling, your work on the Performing Arts Center was extraordinary. I can see why my son speaks so highly of your abilities." "Thank you," Naomi replied, too surprised to say more. The meeting went smoothly. They discussed timelines, budgets, design concepts. Naomi presented her initial ideas for integrating green space and community areas into the housing development. Ethan's team asked thoughtful questions, offered useful suggestions, treated her like an equal partner. It was everything her experience at Morrison and Hayes 5 years ago should have been, but wasn't. After the meeting, Robert Morrison asked to speak with her privately. Naomi followed him into the conference room, curious and slightly nervous. "I owe you an apology," he said without preamble. "For what?" "For creating an environment where my son thought it was acceptable to threaten you. For teaching him that power and money matter more than character. For failing to raise him to be a better man." Robert met her eyes. "I didn't know the details until recently, but I know enough. What Ethan did to you was unforgivable, and he learned that behavior from me." Naomi didn't know what to say. Thank you for saying that. It wasn't your fault, though. Ethan made his own choices. "Choices I modeled for him," Robert said. "I've spent 40 years building an empire and neglecting the people who mattered. My wife left me 10 years ago because I was never home. My daughter barely speaks to me. And my son, I almost turned him into a carbon copy of my worst qualities. But he's changing, Naomi. Watching him with your daughters, seeing how hard he's trying to be present and real, it's made me look at my own life differently. Those little girls saved him in a way. They gave him a reason to become someone worth knowing." "They're pretty amazing," Naomi agreed softly. "They are," Robert smiled. "Just like their mother. I hope you'll give my son another chance. Not for his sake, but because I think you two could build something extraordinary together, professionally and personally." "I don't know about personally," Naomi said carefully. "We're co-parenting successfully and working together well. That might be enough." "Fair enough," Robert said. "But let an old man who waited too long to fix his mistakes give you some advice. Don't let pride or past hurts keep you from happiness if you find it. Life's too short and regret is a heavy burden." Over the next year, Naomi and Ethan fell into an easy partnership. The Seattle project was going beautifully, combining both firms' strengths to create something neither could have achieved alone. Ethan continued visiting the twins regularly, had become a fixture in their lives. He taught them to ride bikes, helped with their homework, showed up to school events. He was, against all odds and expectations, becoming a good father. More complicated was what was developing between Naomi and Ethan. They spent hours on video calls discussing the project, grabbed dinner after meetings to keep talking, fell into comfortable conversation about everything from architecture to politics to their daughter's latest adventures. They weren't dating. Naomi was very clear about that boundary, but they were becoming friends in a way they'd never been before. One evening after the girls were in bed, Naomi and Ethan were sitting on her porch reviewing project documents. He was visiting for the weekend, staying at a nearby hotel but spending most of his time at her house. "Can I ask you something?" he said, setting down his papers. "Have you forgiven me? For what I did 5 years ago?" Naomi thought about it carefully. "I don't know if forgive is the right word," she said slowly. "I've let go of the anger because holding on to it was hurting me more than you. But I don't forget, Ethan. I can't forget what you said, how you threatened me, how scared I was. That's part of our history and it always will be. I understand, Ethan said quietly. And I'm not asking you to forget. I want you to know that I'm not that man anymore. That I would never hurt you or the girls like that again. You showed me your worst when I was most vulnerable, Naomi said, meeting his eyes. It's going to take more than a year of good behavior to prove you've really changed. That's fair, he agreed. I'll spend the rest of my life proving it if I have to. 2 months later, on a crisp October afternoon, the Seattle housing project had its grand opening. It was stunning. 40 units of beautiful, sustainable, affordable housing integrated with community gardens, play spaces, and public art. The mayor gave a speech praising the collaboration between Morrison and Hayes and Cascade Design Group. Journalists from architecture magazines took photos, and Naomi stood on stage with Ethan and their respective teams, accepting credit for something she was genuinely proud of. After the ceremony, there was a reception. Naomi was talking to a reporter when she felt a small hand tug her dress. She looked down to find Zuri and Amara, who'd flown in with Simone for the event, looking up at her with identical excited expressions. Mama, Daddy said he has a surprise for us, Amara announced. Can we go see? What kind of surprise? Naomi asked suspiciously. Ethan approached, looking nervous. It's nothing bad, I promise. Just something I want to show all of you. Will you come? She followed him, the twins holding his hands, Simone trailing behind with an I told you so expression on her face. Ethan led them to one of the units, opened the door, and stepped aside. The apartment was fully furnished, beautiful and warm with photos on the walls. Photos of Naomi and the twins, of all of them together from the past year. There was a kitchen table set for 4, a living room with toys already scattered around, bedrooms decorated for 2 little girls. I don't understand, Naomi said, her heart pounding. What is this? This is Unit 1, Ethan said. The first family to move into this development. I thought, if you were interested, it could be us. All of us. Together. Naomi stared at him. Are you asking me to move to Seattle? To live with you? I'm asking you to give us a real chance, Ethan said, kneeling down in front of her right there in the living room, while their daughters and best friend watched. I'm asking if you'll marry me, Naomi. Not because I'm trying to trap you or control you, but because I love you. Because I've always loved you even when I was too much of a coward to admit it. Because you're the best person I know, and our daughters are the greatest gifts I've ever received, and I want to spend the rest of my life being worthy of you. He pulled out a ring. Simple and elegant. I know I don't deserve you. I know I hurt you in ways I can never fully make up for. But I've spent the last year trying to be the man you and our daughters deserve, and I'll spend the rest of my life continuing to try if you'll let me. What do you say, Naomi Sterling? Will you marry me? The apartment was completely silent. Amara and Zuri were holding hands, eyes wide. Simone had tears streaming down her face. And Naomi looked at this man who'd threatened to destroy her, who'd learned to be better, who'd proven through consistent action that he'd changed. She thought about 5 years ago, standing in a bathroom with a positive pregnancy test, and no idea how she'd survive. She thought about every hard moment since then, every time she'd wanted to give up but kept going. She thought about her daughters, brilliant and beautiful and loved. She thought about this project they'd built together, proof that they could create something extraordinary when they worked as partners instead of adversaries. And she realized something important. His proposal wasn't about him saving her or her forgiving him. It was about 2 imperfect people who'd hurt each other learning to build something new from the broken pieces. It was about family and second chances and choosing love even when it's complicated. Yes, she said, and watched joy transform Ethan's face. Yes, I'll marry you. But Ethan, if you ever, and I mean ever, threaten me or our daughters or try to control us, I will leave and you'll never see us again. Are we clear? Crystal clear, he said, sliding the ring onto her finger. I promise you, Naomi, I'll spend every day earning this. The twins shrieked with delight and launched themselves at both parents. Simone was openly sobbing, and Naomi, standing in this apartment that represented new beginnings, surrounded by the family she'd built from nothing but determination and love. Felt something she hadn't felt in 5 years. She felt safe. She felt hopeful. She felt like maybe, just maybe, happy endings were possible even after the worst beginnings. They got married 6 months later, in a small ceremony in Portland surrounded by people who loved them. Margaret and David from Cascade Design Group were there. Robert Morrison, who'd become surprisingly close with his granddaughters, walked Naomi down the aisle. Simone was maid of honor and cried through the entire ceremony, and Amara and Zuri, wearing matching flower girl dresses, giggled their way through dropping petals everywhere but the aisle runner. When Ethan and Naomi exchanged vows, they were honest about their complicated history. "I can't promise we won't fight," Ethan said. "I can't promise I'll always get it right. But I promise I'll never stop trying. I promise I'll show up every day. And I promise I'll love you and our daughters with everything I have for as long as I live." Naomi took a breath, fighting tears. "5 years ago, you asked me to choose between my career and my family. I chose both, and built an amazing life without you. Today I'm choosing to share that life with you, not because I need you, but because I want you. Because our daughters deserve to see their parents build something beautiful together. Because love isn't about who can hurt who the most. It's about who's willing to keep choosing each other even when it's hard. I choose us, Ethan. All of us." They kissed while their daughters cheered and everyone cried, and it felt like the ending Naomi had fought for, the one she'd earned through years of refusing to let anyone else write her story. The reception was joyful and chaotic, exactly like their lives. At one point, Robert Morrison stood to give a toast. "5 years ago, my son made the worst mistake of his life," he said. "He let fear and cowardice drive away the best thing that ever happened to him." But Naomi Sterling didn't let that define her. She built an extraordinary career, raised 2 incredible daughters, and somehow found the grace to give my son a second chance he didn't deserve. To Naomi, he raised his glass. For teaching us all that strength isn't about never falling down. It's about getting back up and building something beautiful from the broken pieces. Later, as Naomi danced with her daughters and Ethan watched with love evident on his face, Simone pulled her aside. "You did it," she said. "You really did it." "Did what?" "You destroyed him," Simone grinned. "Not by taking revenge or hurting him back, by succeeding so completely without him that he had to confront what an idiot he'd been. That's the best revenge there is." Naomi laughed. "I wasn't trying to get revenge. I was just trying to survive." "That's what made it perfect," Simone said. "You didn't let him destroy you. You destroyed his certainty that he could control you. You became so extraordinary he couldn't ignore it. And now you have everything, the career, the family, the respect, all on your own terms. That's power, honey. That's winning." Naomi looked around the reception, at her colleagues celebrating with her family, at her mother laughing with Robert Morrison, at her daughters showing off their dance moves, at Ethan watching her with wonder like he couldn't believe his luck. 5 years ago, he'd told her he would destroy her life if she kept their babies. He'd threatened her career, her housing, everything she'd worked for. He'd tried to make her small and scared and dependent. Instead, she'd become more successful than he'd ever been, had raised 2 incredible daughters, had built a life so full and rich that letting him back into it had been a gift she chose to give, not a necessity. She'd won, not because she'd beaten him, but because she'd refused to let him break her. And that, Naomi thought as Ethan came over to ask her to dance, was the sweetest victory of all. What did you think of Naomi and Ethan's story? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our latest stories. And check out more emotional stories by clicking the videos on your screen right now.